Hi. Actually, I'm talking about Augmentable Timeline. Sorry. um, Human positioning system is something it's top secret. Shh, don't tell anybody. That's actually something that I'm not ready to talk about. But so I am Jay Van Buren. My company is earlyadopter.com, and I'm here to talk about the Augmentable Timeline. It is 12 feet long so far, and it is augmentable by content about any topic. So it's a timeline about anything. A little bit about Early Adopter. We do a whole lot of different things, but what we love to do most is augmented reality. We've been doing it for about 3 years. We started in 2012 because, we were asked to do augmented reality by one of our favorite customers, the Avenues, the World School, which is a private school in New York City. They're trying to be the school of the future. They wanted to see what you could do with augmented reality, and we talked to the teachers. The teachers wanted flexibility. They wanted to have something where they could make augmentable lessons about any topic. So we came up with 3 different ideas. One was the timeline, which was a way to organize any lesson by time. One was an augmentable map, which was a way to organize any lesson by geography. And the last was a grid, which was an idea about making a grid where you could do lessons about science or math that required some kind of tabular data. That one was a failure, but an interesting one. I'm going to get to that in just a second. What was a success was the map and the timeline, and it's a success because it uses actual physical space as a teaching tool. That's really important in augmented reality for education. If the same thing would work just as well as an app or on a screen, just do it on an app or screen. Why are you doing it in AR? It doesn't really make sense. AR makes sense when you're actually using the reality part of the augmented reality. It's the reality that makes it interesting. Also, the graphical elements need to have meaning, and they need to have a mutually reinforcing relationship to the augmented content. In other words, if the target itself has no meaning to a human, why aren't you just using a QR code that's faster? You know, everyone knows that that's supposed to trigger something. So the augmented content and the marker needs to have some kind of relationship. However, it can't be too tight of a relationship, because if it is so specific, it basically becomes something where the augmentation can only meaningfully interact with one marker. There's a one-to-one relationship. Then you're losing what's the other big possibility of augmented reality, which is that you can have one marker and multiple augmentations, or augmentations that change or that are dynamic or that are driven by data, whatever. At Avenues, they're using the augmentable timeline right now. They have a floor to ceiling augmentable map installed. That's metal with coating on it, so it's going to be written on with a white with markers. And students are using it for things like putting a paper about oil in Egypt on Egypt, so people can see it. It facilitates cross-disciplinary collaboration, and it works on multiple platforms. The grid we never installed, didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is that we were using as markers these images from the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, and we were treating them too preciously. They were the whole design was very staid and had a kind of very elegant look to it. And when you looked at it, you expected all of the that's just a piece of it. You expected all of it to be about Leonardo. And when we tried to have content that wasn't about Leonardo, it was just a cognitive dissonance. It just basically, people were just like, "What? It's broken. I don't understand. What's this?" They couldn't take in the information because it didn't make sense to them. So we learned from that, and we're now creating the augmentable timeline, codename Time Captain. And it is printed, and it is augmentable. There's one of the augments over it, and it's augmentable with anything, any kind of content. This is some of the starter content that we're creating for it. with information about history of science, history of technology, history of visual and performing arts. We're working on a history of literature and a history of social and political. So the vision is that it'll eventually show 5,000 years, be 120 feet long. The idea is we're going to be able to sell this in pieces, and if you want to, you can buy the whole thing and put it down a really, really long hallway. Right now, we are only done the orange and red part of the spectrum there. So, and any school that buys one is joining a community of collaborators, constructing a vision of history that can be both personal and collective. And what I mean by that is that essentially, you know, oh well, this is it. This is the timeline. Little video of it, but basically, people will be able to share lessons that they create. One teacher in one school would be able to share a lesson with another teacher in another school. Students can create lessons for other students, etc. And the reason it works is because it's continuous, it's unique at every scale. The design shows no respect for the collage elements. It's kind of a silly, disrespectful, irreverent kind of collage design that sort of just creates a wash of history. None of the pieces of it, the person looking at it doesn't really expect any of the pieces of it to be, that's what this is about. It's just everything there is an exemplar of that year, and the only part of it that's really specific is those lines. So the lines, each individual line represents a certain year. The rest of it is just there as kind of a generalized representation of that period in history. Therefore, the content can be about anything, and you don't expect every tiny piece of it to be only about whatever the picture is. Like I said, people can create content, share it through social media, existing platforms, and also there's a possibility of annotation, commentary, response. One person's version of history could be responded to by another person's version of history. And one of the things we found about using AR in education is it does really promote sociability, and it promotes some of the cooperation that Sally was talking about. As soon as a kid sees something on the timeline, the first thing they do is say, "Oh, hey, come here, look at this," and they want to show it to their friends, and they run around together looking at the stuff on the timeline, and so it really makes for a cooperative learning experience. History should never be finished. So we're open to collaborators, and if you want to get updates, go to earlyadopter.com/timecaptain or follow us on EA Team Tweets, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for Jay?
Oh, over here. Yeah.
Are you tying any of these historical experiences to geotagging data or geotagging anything?
The question is, are we going to geotag or tie the stuff to geotag stuff? Actually, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, it would be a little tricky, because then if you're wanting someone to then go visit that place, I mean, presumably, well, the kind of awesome thing about the timeline is we don't have to know where it is. The timeline is the timeline. It could be in any school, anywhere, and it'll work. But as far as like tying those things to a map or something, I mean, actually, if we had a map in every school as well, you could do something where triggering one on one thing would trigger something on the other thing, that could be kind of cool. So yeah. Over here. Yeah.
So actually two. So have you thought about also making user-generated content for the visual? So you said that the current design of the poster is kind of a collage of all the interesting visuals together by you guys. But I think it would be really fun for the kids to put together something that they like putting together, like a scratchbook style.
We would then print out, and they would be able to make their own collage.
Yes. So your product is essentially a creative tool for people to create their own stories and their visuals.
That sounds like a really great idea. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, what you would need for that, then you would need a back end that could then match up all of the user created visuals into a database and line them up with each other. Mm-hmm. on the years, so that computer vision could recognize any of those timelines and feed back the same content that corresponded to the same year.
And also, yeah, exactly. So you can sort of do your branching, say if you want to connect to other people's stories based on the either time or visual.
That's really great. If there's any back-end app developers in the audience that want to collaborate on that aspect of it, that would be fantastic.
And that
Okay. And a curation. Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, you probably would need to have a teacher or somebody approve it. You might want to just have some grown-up look at it, before you actually print it and send it out to the schools.
So we can do one more question. Nope. Cool.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Jay Van Buren.